Hello everyone, this is Professor Robert Solis. Welcome to this video lesson. We're going to be talking about structures, but specifically I'm going to be implementing an array of structures so that I can create a tiny card database. So let me show you how the program works first to demonstrate. So first I'll click Start. And the idea is that we have an application that allows me to open up a file. And then it's going to display those records, and then I can go to the next record or to the previous record. Now, right off the bat, you're going to notice a couple of things. First of all, the next button and the previous button are disabled. So if I click on these, nothing happens. You'll also notice that these text boxes are disabled as well because I haven't loaded any database. So all of these are disabled. You don't see any cursors blinking inside of them. The only thing that I can do is I can click the File menu option, and I can open a database or I can exit out of the program. So if I click Exit, all right, so the program is no longer running. Let's go ahead and run it again. And if I click on File, if I click on Open, so what I'm doing is I've created an Open File dialog box, and I'm looking specifically for text box, or text files rather. And so I've already created this automobile text document, which I'll show you in just a moment. So if I select that and I'm going to open it, let me click Open again. And so you'll see that it's displaying the first record. I'm going to go to the next record. Okay, there's the next record. Now there is no additional record. I only have 2 records here. So if I click the next button, nothing happens. But if I go back over here to the previous button and click that, it's going to go back to the previous record. And we're right now looking at record number 0, and we can look at record number 1. All right, if I wanted to make a change, say for example, so if I don't want the Toyota Camry, I want the Sentra, say for example, and I don't want the Ford F-150, I want the Ford Explorer, say for example. All right, so if I go back to the previous record, Century, go back to the next record, Explorer, so you see that the database has made a change here, but I need to save my work, so I'm going to click Save to save that work, and then I can close the program. All right, let's take a look at that file that we were just taking a look, that I just demonstrated a moment ago. Let me open up the File Explorer, and here it is. I'm going to double click on here, and you'll see what this text file looks like. It is comma delimited, which just simply means that all of the items are separated by comma. As you can see here, Toyota, comma, Century, comma. Let me see, I think this is the miles per gallon, cylinders, and horsepower. And then when we go to the beginning of the next line, that's the next record. And if we went to the beginning of the next line, we'd have the next record, and so forth and so on for however many records your database can accommodate. In this case, I think I only just created 5 entries, or the opportunity to create 5 entries. Here we only have 2 entries, which is record number 1. We call this a record. Record number 2, we call these guys fields. So this will be the make, this will be the model, this will be miles per gallon, cylinders, and then horsepower. All right, so that is a text database that I created in Notepad, and I saved it as automobile.txt, but I don't know where it's going to be kept. Well, actually, I do know where it's going to be kept, but my program allows me, via the usage of the Open File dialog, to go anywhere. So I can go into any one of these folders to find the actual text file that I want to open. So in this case, I want this one. It's already going to be looking for text files, which is what I wanted to do. And so I'll click Open, and I got to click Open again. And so here it is. All right. So let me close this. Let me talk about the graphical user interface properties first, and then we could talk about the code. Well, first of all, you'll see over here, let me move my cursor over here specifically so that we can take a look at the name property. So the first thing that you're going to want to do is to create a bunch of labels, and you can change the text property to make, model, MPG, cylinders, and horsepower. And then we're going to have you create a bunch of text boxes. So this first text box, as you can see, is txt make. The next one is txt model, so have your eyes over here. The next one is txt MPG. The next one is txt cylinders. And then finally, the next one is txt horsepower, or HP. This is a label, and so I just simply called this LBL record number. I changed the text property to 0, and I also made it so that it's resizable, and also there's a border, a fixed single a border style fixed single around it. These two guys are buttons. So this is going to be the BTN previous button. This is going to be the BTN next button. And all I did was to type in 3 of the angled brackets over here and over here to give you a visual representation of going to the next record, going to the previous record. Over here, we have a menu strip. And so I'm not sure if I've spoken about menu strips before, but I'm going to assume that I haven't. I have another dummy application over here, so let me just switch over here to this guy over here. If you wanted to insert a menu strip, you would open up the toolbox, and then you would go to the menus and toolbars property, and then over here you're going to see menu strip. What you'll do is you'll just simply drag and drop the menu strip to the form, and there you go. So let's see here. Over here, for my previous one, it looks like I have File, and then Open, Save, Exit with these horizontal lines here. All right, so over here, I want to type in File, press Enter. And then any item that I enter over here will be a sub-menu. So it looks like over here I've got Open. All right, so we'll type over here, Open, Enter. And then you'll notice back over here in our original program, we have a horizontal line. And the way that you can create that horizontal line is you just simply press hyphen and then press Enter. And so it's going to give you a horizontal line. It looks like the next thing we have to do is type in Save. Okay, so we'll type in Save, Enter. I need another one of those horizontal lines, so create a horizontal line like that. And then over here, I think the last thing to do is to type in Exit. Okay, so over here, we'll type in Exit. All right, so there you go. That's it. Now, let me go ahead and run the program. It's not going to do anything, but it'll show you that with this File menu option, I can click on File. Here's Open, Save, and Exit. Now, in general, you probably want to go ahead and give these Hungarian notation, give these menu items a Hungarian notation of MNU. So let me go ahead and open up the Properties panel. So over here, Properties, and I'm going to go over here to the Name property. Let me go ahead and make this alphabetical order. And so here's the Name property over here. Open this up a little bit. All right, so I'm going to select this guy over here, and I'm going to call that MNU Open. This guy over here, I'll call it MNU Save. And then finally, I have this guy over here, MNU Exit. All right. So I have MNU Open, MNU Save, MNU Exit. These are the Hungarian notation for the menu strip items. And so now, if I double click on any one of those, I can enter code. So for example, let me go back to my original application. Let's say that I double click on Exit. You'll see here that I have MNU Exit _ click, and I just simply have the close option. So let's do that over here for our other application. I'll double click over here, and I'll just type in close, which is what you would need to type in order to close the application. So if I run the program now, and if I click on File, click on Exit, you see that we're no longer running because we've closed our program. Okay. All right, so that's how you work with menu options. And of course, here's the top menu option. Here are sub menu options for File. If I wanted to create another same category as File menu option, I would just simply type in here, and then I would get its own subcategories, so forth and so on, right? So we just want to focus on these three right here. All right, another thing that we're going to want to do when we run our program, you saw that I'm able to open a file dialog. This is great right here. This file dialog is nice because then it allows the user to navigate anywhere within the computer to open up a particular file. So how do we get this? So let me close the program, and I'm going to go back over here to the toolbox. And actually, you know what? Let me go over here to my dummy application and show you this way. So let me go ahead and open up the toolbox. Here it is. And I'm going to scroll all the way down. Let me collapse that, I should say. And here we are, dialogues. So over here in dialogues, you see it says open file dialog. What you do is you take this guy and you just simply drag it to the form and let go. And so now you have enabled the ability for your application to use the open file dialog. Now, you don't have to name it what I name it, but in general, from the open file dialog, I typically like to type in OpenFD. So over here, if I wanted to change that, here's the open file dialog. I'm going to go to the name and type in open FD, FD standing for file dialog. If I created a save dialog, it would be save FD. So what this does is it allows me to create, or to display rather, an open file dialog box. Now if I run this program, it's not going to do that, right? If I click on File, Open, nothing's going to happen because, as you'll see over here, when I go to File, double click on Open, I don't have any code here. So that's where I got to go back to my original program to show you what I've actually done. So I'm going to go over here to File and then Open, double click, and that's going to take me to the code area. All right, so let me collapse this stuff here so we can see more of the code area. And so when the user clicks on the menu option Open, what do I want to do? Well, the first thing that I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to display a title. Now remember, let me go back over here. Our open file dialog is called OpenFD. So what I'll do is I'll say openfd.title and then type in whatever it is that I want to be displayed on the title. I can also say openfd.filter to type in, or to display rather, whatever it is that I want displayed for the filter. So with this visible, let me go ahead and run the application and show you what I'm talking about. So if I click File, Open, so here's the open file dialog. I'm going to move this over here. See where it says open a database file? Well, that's exactly what the title says. So now you know how to control the title. Let me move this up a little bit. You'll see over here that there's filtered information. It says specifically text files with an open and close parens, ampersand, dot txt, not ampersand, asterisk rather, dot txt. All right, so there you go. That's this right here. Let me cancel this. Let me close this. Now this next part right here is just simply indicating what kind of files are you trying to filter. What kind of files do you want to only display? So after this pipe, which is this vertical line on your keyboard, it's the button just above your Enter key with the vertical line and the backslash. So this is the separator between what is it that's going to be displayed and what is going to be filtered. So in this case, since my intention is to filter text files, I'm going to put this asterisk.txt. Maybe I want MP3 files, right? Maybe I want PNG files. Well, in this case, we're dealing with text files, so I type in .txt. All right, so that's how we display that filter information. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create some car items. Specifically, for this particular car, let me go back over here. I want its given make, model, MPG, cylinders, horsepower. And so the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to create a structure. Now, in this structure, remember from a previous video lesson that structures basically hold nouns. They hold different data types. I can hold strings, I can hold doubles, I can hold integers, I can hold any combination of data type that I want. Well, I'm going to call my structure automobile data. So I type in struct automobile data, open and close curly braces, and then I type in public and then whatever the data type is, and then what I want to call it. So I'm going to have a string that's called make, another string called model. I'm going to have a double called MPG because sometimes I see people say, oh, I get 23.5 miles per gallon. Well, so I want to make that a double so that I can introduce the decimal point. Now, there's no such thing as a 7.3 cylinders in a car, so we make that a whole number, an integer. And in general, horsepower is also described as an integer. So I'm going to create that as an int. So this is my structure. Now what I'm going to do is my intention is to make an array of this structure. Well, if I'm going to create an array of this structure, let me go ahead and create a constant, and I'm going to call that array size. So over here in my global stuff, the reason why I call it global stuff is because it doesn't belong to any given function. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, let's go ahead and create room for 5 cars, or for 6 cars, or for 7 cars, right? However many cars that I want, this is where I can declare that. Now, how many items do I have here? Do you have, well, let's count 1, 2, 3, 4. I have 5 items. So that's what this constant represents. And you're going to see how I'll use this constant in just a moment. Now let's go ahead and create multiple items of these cars. So in other words, what I want to create is an array of this structure. So I'm going to call it car array. Now, what kind of array is it? Is it an array of integers? Is it an array of doubles? No, it's an array of automobile data. In other words, it's an array of this structure. So the way that I'm going to do that is I'll type automobile array, open and close square bracket, car array, assignment operator, new, once again, the name of the structure, and then how big it is. Well, in this case, it's array size. And so the nice thing about creating a constant is that I could type in a number over here and it'll change automatically the size of my database capability, which in this case, I can hold a total of 7 cars. All right, I'm going to have to keep track of the record index. And the record index is what record are we looking at? So when I run the program and when I load a database like automobile.txt, you'll see that I'm looking at record 0. And then if I click over here, this is record 1. And if I had another record, if I clicked over here, that would be record 2. So that's what this thing refers to over here, is the record index. The number of records, in other words, how many of these items do I have? I guess I could have just used the record index and then add 1 to it to indicate the number of records. But I like to have a separate variable that says, hey, how many records do I have? And at runtime, we're going to determine that I only have 2, as you just previously saw. Now, when the user is going to be selecting a given file, see, in this case, I already created a file, and you would have already created a file called automobile data. But what if I didn't want to do that? What if I wanted to create like car data? So I go over here, I say open up Notepad, and so we're going to create, I don't know, let's see, let me create a Chevrolet Impala. It's going to get 25 miles to the gallon, and it's got 8 cylinders and, I don't know, 300 horsepower, say, for example. So I'm going to click File, Save As, and let me go ahead and save that to my C drive, Users, Robert, Documents. Okay, and I'm specifically going to save this as Cars. And it's going to save it as a TXT file. Click Save. I'm going to close this. All right, so here's my program. I'm going to click File, Open, and there's the Cars text database that I just created. So I could click this guy, and it should install all of the cars. So sorry about that. Let me click Open again. There it is. Chevy Impala, 25 miles per gallon, 8 cylinders, 300 horsepower. Now, of course, the data has to be entered in a specific way, and I have to import it in a specific way. But that has to have a location, right? We have to have a location for that given file, and so that's what file name represents. File name is going to represent not only just the name of that file, but the path. Like it's on the C drive, it's in the Documents folder, so forth and so on. Okay. All right. So now that I've described the global stuff, I can go back over here and talk about this. I need the ability to import data. Specifically, I need to import data from this file right here. Well, in order to do that, I have to create what's referred to as a stream reader. In other words, the ability to establish communication for reading purposes. So to do that, I'm going to type in system.io.streamReader, and the name of that internal representation, that internal ability to read from an external file, I'm going to call it input file. So externally, the name of the file is automobile.txt. Internally, we're going to refer to that as input file. Now, this guy right here is a line of communication with this particular file in terms of being able to read from it. So we call this a stream reader. This is the file that we will draw from this right here, this information. So this and this have a tie, which you're going to see in just a moment. All right. Well, let me go back over to the program here. Actually, let me just run it. The user could click File, Open, and decide, nah, I don't want to open a file. So they either click X or they click Cancel. All right, well, if that happens, then this is the capability we want to give to them. If the user opens the file dialog box, and if they click the Cancel button, then just simply return semicolon, which basically means just go ahead and close the file dialog box and continue on with the program. So nothing's going to happen. You have not opened up a file dialog. Now, if the user decides to select a file and click OK, so for example, if I say File, Open, here's the database that I want, and I click Open. Now, here it says OK, but really it means this Open button. So if I click Open, then something's going to happen. Namely, it's going to load the data. All right, so if the user clicks OK, or the Open button that I just shared with you, so what are we going to do? All right, well, here's my idea. Well, first of all, remember that when we display a record of data, we're going to call this part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, part 5. And really these different parts belong to our structure, right? We can think of it that way. Like of our structure automobile data, what's part 1? Well, that would be the make. What's part 2? That would be the model, so forth and so on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a variable called part index to indicate which one of these items, which one of these members from our structure are we referring to, part 1, part 2, and you'll see how that's going to work out in just a moment. I need to know the number of records, so let me go ahead and start it off at 0 before I enter my for statement. The record index, we're going to start that off at 0 as well. Okay, so the user, when they clicked open, they obviously had to have clicked a file. In this case, we clicked our automobile.txt file. So here it is, automobile.txt. We are going to open that. And so our input file, which was this guy that we created over here, what is our input file? It is a stream reader. This thing is the ability to read information from our text file. And so that's what we've assigned right here. All right, what is the string representation of that file? That's what this is going to be called over here. So I create a string called file. And what is that? Well, from the open file dialog box, it's the file name. And then I want to be able to read all of that text. Well, how do I get that? Well, I can just simply type in file dot read all, and that's going to be able to read all of the information from the file. So before I proceed, let me go ahead and just demonstrate what's happening here. And what I'll do is I'll just simply stop right here. So I'm going to place a break and we'll run the program and it'll stop at that location. We'll freeze time. So I'll click File, Open, and here's the automobile data. I'm going to click Open and let me click Open again. All right, so I've just established a line of communication with that external file, and that's what input file is going to represent. Right now it says null. It hasn't made that connection yet. So I'm going to click over here where it says step over. All right, so now you can see here I've established a stream reader. That's what all of this stuff basically means. I've established an ability to communicate with this file. All right, well, first of all, let me go ahead and get the file name, which you can see is right here. So let me go ahead and step over that. If I hover on top of file, you see now what file is. It's C:\\. Now it says \\\. This is just a programmatic way of describing the one backslash. And so users, Robert, documents, automobile.txt. So that is our file name. Perfect. Now, let me go ahead and step over and we execute this line, and you see that text now is all of this information. Toyota, Century, 36, 150, \r, \n, and then Ford Explorer. So in other words, here's one record, here's the next record. The \n means go to the beginning of the line. The \r means go to the beginning of the line. \n means go to the next line. So basically, this is like a carriage return line feed. That's what these two do, and it has to be in this order: \n, \r, \n. Now, let me just show you something. If I were to open up the File Explorer, okay, so here's the File Explorer. And if I open up the automobile data, do you see a \r or a \n here? You do not. So these are invisible characters. They exist. Now, when we're running our program, I can see them. And that's these two guys right here. Whoops, sorry. Here we go. \r, \n. I can see them here. Then basically what this represents is someone pressing the Enter key to go to the beginning of the next line. Okay, so now I have all of the text from my database. Well, if I have all of the text from my database, what I'm going to need to do is I'm going to need to split it up. First of all, I want to display this first record on my form, and then this will just simply exist in memory. So when the user clicks, go to the next button, go to the next button, well, then we go to the next record. So I want to install all of this stuff in memory. How do I do that? Well, first of all, I need to separate this stuff, right? I need to separate the make, model, miles per gallon, cylinders, horsepower. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this guy over here. First of all, let me reduce this size just a little bit here. I'm going to use for each. For each basically is a looping structure. It works just like the for statement. It's nice and that I can say for each of these particular items in this bigger group of items. And so that's exactly what I'm going to do. So here's how it works out. You type in for each, and you're going to create a variable of a type of something. Well, obviously, I need to get this string Toyota. I need to get this string Century. I need to get this string 30, 6, 150. I need to get this string. You can see the quotation mark, the quotation mark. This is a string. I need to get these individual string items. So I say for each line, by the way, what's a line? It's a string. Okay, now let's go ahead and read all of the lines from this file. So that's how you do it. What's the file? It's this guy right here. You've already obtained it. It's from openfd.filename. You are going to file.read all the lines. So reading all the lines means I type in a bunch of stuff, enter, type in a bunch of stuff, enter. All that stuff that I typed in and hit enter, on each one of those lines, I am going to read them one by one. So I'm going to read a string line, and I'm going to read through all of them. So let's start off with the first one. Well, the first thing that I'm going to note is that since I am about to read a line of data or a record of data, I better go ahead and increment the number of records, because before there were no records, now I have one record. So I'm going to say number of records. This is just a shorthand notation for number of records is being assigned number of records plus 1. So in other words, we're incrementing this by 1, this shorthand notation. All right, so let me go ahead and step through here, and right here, number of records, as you can see, is 0, and then now that's going to be 1. Or I can just simply hover on top of this here. Number of records is 1. All right, next. So I have different parts of the string. Specifically, I have, this is part 1, this is part 2, part 3, part 4, part 5. So I'm going to use what's called the split string. This is a really cool. First of all, notice that I create an array string called parts. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that line of data, which is this record right here. I'm going to take that line of data and I'm going to split it or delimit it with the commas. So in other words, what I'm saying is, notice how all of the data over here is delimited, in other words, separated by commas. So we call that a delimiter. This is comma delimited. If I put a colon, it would be colon delimited. If I put a hashtag, it would be hashtag delimited. In this case, how do I separate this data from this data from this data? Well, the commas are delimiting this data. So what this line of code does is it says, I need to extract all of the parts, which is all of this stuff over here. I need to extract all these individual parts. And by the way that they are separated or the way they are split apart is via the character comma. So notice the single quote and also the comma in between, indicating that that's how you're going to split this line of text. You're going to split it in accordance to the commas. So now that I have that, it's going to be placing that into the parts array, which is basically a bunch of strings. All right, let me go ahead and step over. Now if I hover on parts, I'm going to click on this triangle. Look at this. The 0 index is Toyota. The 1 index is Century. 30, 6, 150. So all of the different parts have now been split for this given line or for this given record. All right, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to place all of this into my car array. Now remember, the car array is an array of structures. So in this case, it looks like I've got six items or six members for my structure. Not 6 members, 6 items in my structure. 7, I should say, because 0 through 6 is 7. And if I hover on top of that, here are the individual members for each of the different structure items that I have. All right, well, if I want to refer to the make item, so let me just go back here because I have a feeling that maybe some of you are confused. What is an automobile data? An automobile data are these 5 items: make, model, MPG. Okay, but I don't want to just create one of those. I want to create many of them. So remember, I created this thing called car array. So car array is really a bunch of automobile data items. And specifically, it looks like I created array size, which is 7 of them. So if I hover on top of here, then that's why we have 7 of these. Now, let's take a look at the first one. By the way, none of those are populated yet. And so that's why we see these items. They haven't been populated. So car array 0 doesn't have any items in it. Car array 1 also doesn't have any items in it, and so forth and so on. Car array 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, they are all empty. All right, now let me go back over here. I need to populate those items. So I'm going to populate the car array make, car array dot model, car array dot mpg, dot cylinders, dot horsepower. I am going to populate all of those based on the line of data that I have. Okay, so I have this. Parts is now an array with all of those individual items within the string line. So what I'll do is I'll say, okay, let's see. It looks like parts index right now currently is 0. Parts 0, what is that? Let's see, parts 0. It looks like parts 0 is Toyota, right? Here's the 0 index. Here's Toyota. So parts 0, we're going to put that into the make property of your car array, which is basically an array of structures. And so it looks like car array 0, right? So the index is currently 0. So car array 0 dot make is going to be Toyota. All right, so that, let me step over here. Let's go to car array. Let's take a look at specifically the 0, car array 0. Ah, there it is. Make is Toyota. We just insert that. Now you'll notice the plus plus over here. So we call that post incrementing as opposed to pre-incrementing. What this means is, first of all, use part index, and then once you've used it, add 1 to it. So what this does is it says, okay, this is going to be parts index. Part index is 0. Then after I've used it for this line of code, when I jump to the next line of code, take that part index and increment 1. And now you see that this was 0. Now it's 1, because that's what that plus plus did. Over here, it's going to change it to 2. Over here, it's going to change it to 3, and so forth and so on. So the plus plus here means I want you to add 1 to part index, but first use it. Then when you're finished with this line of code, when you go to the next line of code, that's when I want you to add 1 to it. And why do I want to do that? Well, the reason why I want to do that is because you can see over here that part 0 is the make. Part 1 is the model. Part 2 is the miles per gallon. And so that's what I'm doing over here. I want to insert the make, model, miles per gallon. So I need to refer to the different parts. Now that parts index is 1, let's see here. So part index 1, that refers to the model, right? This is the make, this is the model. In other words, this is the word century. We're going to put that into the model of this particular car array, which is an array of a bunch of structures. All right, so let's see what happens here. So by the way, let me just prove it to you. Right now, there's nothing in model. So let's go over here. And for this 0 index, a model is null. Okay, but then if I step over, all right, let's take a look now. So if I go to the 0 index, model is century. So you can see what I'm doing is I'm step by step going through each of these different parts right here. These different parts, and I'm putting them into make, model, MPG, cylinders, and horsepower. And while I'm doing that, the parts index is being incremented from line to line so that it goes from 0 to 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 and so forth and so on. All right, so let me just go ahead and step through all these. Now that I've done that for this first record, because remember, what are we trying to do? We're trying to get the data from the file, and we're trying to put it into here. We're trying to put it into, where are we trying to put it into? We're trying to put it into here, the automobile data. So once I've got it in the automobile data, then I can go ahead and display it in my design. Okay, so that was the first record, right? Let me just prove it to you. That's this first one record over here, Toyota, Sentra. But we got that other one. We got that Ford, I forgot what it was, the Ford F-150 or the Ford Escort. We've got that other record that we've got to input. But before I do that, let me get ready for the next iteration and set the part index, which was this guy over here, set the part index back to 0. And the record index, let me go ahead now and go to the next record index. Currently it's at 0. Well, I need to now go to 1 because I have another record potentially that I'm going to be inputting. So let me go over here and step over. Let's go back to the top. Have I obtained all of the different lines? Have I read all of the lines? Nope, I still have one more to read. So I'm going to go ahead and step over. And so now the number of records is going to increment by 1. So currently the number of records is 1, but I have a second record to input. So now the number of records is 2. Okay, so the line of data right here, here it is, Ford Explorer 25 for 100. Let me break those up into parts. So that's what this line does. So all of the parts now are are broken out into this array called parts. And you can see over here, Ford Explorer 25, Ford 100. All right, I've broken up all those parts. I need to insert that into my next car array, array of structures. And you'll go over here. We'll see here we have 7 individual items for our structure. We just populated this one, right? Toyota, Century, blah, blah, blah. Okay, but let's go over here to now this one. I need to populate this guy over here. I populated 0. Now I need to populate 1. And so that's what all of these lines do, as I've just explained previously. So let me go ahead and step through this. And so now if I take a look at car array, specifically at the 1 index, you'll see that all of those items have now been inserted into index 1 of car array. All right, again, let's get ready for a potential next iteration, a next loop of this particular database. In other words, I don't know that we have 3 records, 4 records, 5. We only have 2, actually. You know that. But what if I didn't know? So I got to get ready for the next one. So I set the part index to 0. The record index, I increment by 1. I go back over here and say, okay, I'm ready to draw the next line. Oh, I've already read all the lines. So since I've read all the lines, I jump out of this for statement. And now I need to populate the text boxes with the first records. Remember, we just opened the database. Now let's put the first record in all of these guys. Let's enable all these text boxes. Let's enable these 2 buttons as well. All right, so I'm back over here. Here's the record index. I'm going to set that to 0. And txt.make, I'm going to take whatever this car array, it looks like the index is 0. So car array 0, that's this guy right here. And I have cylinders is 6, horsepower is 150, make is Toyota, model is Century, MPG is 30, and that's what I'm going to do over here. I'm going to assign each of these to the appropriate text box. So let's see here. If I go over here to the text box, it won't show me yet because I'm still in this debug mode. But what it did was it placed all these items into the text property for these various text boxes. Okay, that record number on the bottom over here, we are going to take whatever the record number is and turn that into a string and put that to the text property of this guy. So record number, as you can see, is 0. We're going to convert that to a string, put that into the text property of LBL record number, which is this label down here. All right. Next, I want to enable the next button and the previous button, because when I first ran this program, these 2 are disabled. I don't want you to be able to click these guys unless you've loaded a database. So how do I enable this? How do I enable that? Well, first of all, if I click this guy over here, and if I go to, well, I can't do it right now. Let me go ahead and stop the program, and I'll show you. If I go to Properties, and if I select this button right here or this button right here, here's the enabled property, and I set it to false. I did the same thing for these text boxes. I selected each of these text boxes, and I changed them enabled false. All right, so if they are disabled, then I should be able to enable them. So let me go ahead and put a break right here, since this is where I left off, and I can remove that break, run the program, and I'm going to go open. Let's open up the automobile database. Okay, we're stopping right here. So what this is going to do is enable both of those buttons. Now, another thing that I'm also going to want to do is to enable all those text boxes, because I disabled them, as I just previously mentioned. All these are disabled. So what I did was I created a function called enable text boxes. And so this is what I did. Let me scroll down a little bit. And here is enable text boxes. I just simply typed in void enable text boxes with an open and close parenthesis. So in other words, this function does not return anything, nor does it receive anything as parameters. The void means I don't return anything. You call me and I do my job, but I don't return anything back to you. Oh, by the way, when you call me, I don't need anything. So the open and close parentheses that are empty just simply indicates I don't need anything to do my job. You call me and I already know what to do. What am I going to do? Well, for each of the different text boxes, for the .enabled property, I'm going to set those all to true. All right, so I just created a little function to help me take care of that. So when I jump over here, it's going to enable all those. Okay, and then finally, here's another thing that we have to consider. All right, I created, so you'll notice over here it says input file.close with an open and close parentheses. So anytime that you open a line of communication using this approach here, where I said, okay, so input file is going to be file.openText. Okay, so I've got this guy over here, right? So input file allows me to get data from a particular file. How did I do that? Well, I created a stream reader. So when I create a stream reader, this is a line of communication to that external file, namely automobile.txt. Well, anything that I open in terms of a stream reader, I've got to close. So this is really the same thing as opening a line, even though you don't see the word open. This is opening a line of communication with that external file. When you do that, you also have to close that line of communication. So do you see over here? In fact, let me just go ahead and split the screen here. Probably make it a little bit easier. So I'll split the screen temporarily. And so here we are with our stream reader. Let me go down over here. And here we are. Okay, so input file is a stream reader to a particular external file. Input file.close must be done in order for you to release those resources back to the Windows operating system. So if you did not do this, it would be like your mom saying, hey, do you live in a barn? Close the door, right? You leave the door open, and what happens? I mean, it's still available for things to be input. We don't want that. We don't, and in essence, what this does is it takes up a certain amount of Windows resources, memory, CPU time, what have you. It takes up some Windows resources while this thing is open, so we close it to free up those resources, to free up the memory in the heap or the free store, to allow the Windows operating system to use that chunk of memory for something else. Okay? All right, so let me go ahead and reduce this here. Kind of sensitive here. Can I do that? Do I almost have it right? There. Oh, I almost had it. There we go. And move that up. Okay. So we close that. And let me go ahead and step out. And then the last thing that I'm going to do is, this is the file name that the user selected, right? So this guy over here, user Robert documents automobile.txt. So I want to remember that, because in the future I'm going to need to know what the file name is so that I can save the data. So that's what this is. And so over here, you see the file name is C drive Robert documents automobile.txt. We're going to need that in the future. Okay, so let me go ahead and continue. And so now you'll see that I've loaded my entire first record. All of these are enabled, right? This is also enabled. So how does this work? btn next. So let me go ahead and place the code over here and stop the program right here. Okay, so let me go back over here to my run, which is this guy right here. And I'm going to click the btn next button. So I click the btn next button. That takes us to this chunk of code. And you'll notice over here, as long as the record index is less than the number of records minus 1. Now, why am I doing this? In other words, if I have 2 records, then I should only be able to go from record 1 to record 2. There is no record 3. Well, I already have tracked the number of records, which in this case is 2. So the record index always starts off at 0. So if there's 2 records, this is either going to be 0 or 1. Well, in other words, it's going to be the number of records minus 1. So the number of records, which is 2 minus 1, is 1. So as long as this thing is less than 1, then there is a next record to go to. And that's why I had this if statement here. Well, first of all, if there is the ability to go to a next record, which there is, so I'm going to go over here. Well, the first thing that I want you to do is I want you to call a function that I created called update record. So let's go down over here to update record to see what this guy does. Well, what update record does is it takes the whatever the user may have typed or changed, and it's going to take all those text box items, right? So all these text box items. What if I change this? Oh, not from Toyota. What if I change this from, let me see here. So we have the Toyota Camry. We all have the Toyota Century, right? What if I change that from Camry to Century, say, for example? So what we're going to do is we're going to take that and we're going to update the car array. So right now, this thing says Century. Maybe I'll make it Camry, right? So if this word has Camry, it's going to change the make property, or I should say the model, rather. It'll change the model to Camry. And so that's in essence what this thing is doing. It's taking all of the text box items or texts and it's gonna, and some of these are numbers, right? Like MPG is a number, so I had to use convert.toDouble. Cylinders and horsepower, that's an integer, so I have to use convert.toInt32. But notice how I'm taking the text property of all of these text boxes, and I'm going to assign them to the various members of my car array, which is in a car array of a structure. Okay, so that's what update records does. All right, so let me go through this. Now, in order for me to go to the next record, the record index has to be incremented. Right now it's 0. We're going to add 1 to it. So now the record index is 1. All right, the label, this guy down here, let's go ahead and make it from a 0 to a 1. So that's what this guy does here. It takes the record index, which is 1, converts it to a string, and it's going to put it into the text property. So we put it into the text property. All right, now TXT cylinders, TXT horsepower, make, model, MPG. Let's go ahead and update that with whatever is currently in my car array record index. Well, let's see here, car array, record index, as you can see, is 1. So let's go back over here to car array, and the index is 1. There's the 1. So that means I need to populate Ford Explorer 4125 into the TXT cylinders, horsepower, make, model, MPG, respectively. So that's what this thing does. It's going to insert all of those respectively. I'm going to continue. And so now you see Ford Explorer 25, so forth, so on, record number 1. All right, so that's good because we were able to get all the data which is being housed right here in this car array, everything that's being housed, but specifically record number 1 as opposed to record number 0. Record number 1 is now going to be displayed. There it is. All right, now if I click the back button, oh, by the way, if I click this button over here, let's see here. So it looks like record index is 1. Num of records is 2. 2 minus 1 is 1. Is 1 less than 1? No, it's not. So watch what happens. It goes from here. It just jumps out of the if statement. Why? Because there is no additional record. I have the first record. I have the second record. If I click this, nothing should happen. So let me take off this break. Let me go back over here. Watch what happens now as I click this over and over again. Nothing's going to happen, and nothing should happen because there is no additional record. But if I click this guy over here, I should go back to record 0. See this? Go back over here, record 0. So let me go ahead and stop this so we can see how BTN previous click works. So I'll put a break right here. Go back to my program. I'm going to click this guy over here. All right, so is the record, which is currently 1, is it greater than 0? So in other words, as long as this thing is greater than 0, then there is a previous record to go to. What am I going to do? Well, I'm going to update the record. So remember, that's, well, I'll just show it to you again. Let me go ahead and step into that. So I'll step in. This is where I take the text property for the make, model, MPG, and assume that the user may have changed that. And if they did, I better update my car array. So maybe the user typed in, let's see here, right now it says Ford. For model, it says Explorer. Maybe they typed in, instead of Explorer, they typed in Sentra. So I better put that Sentra into the model property of my car array. All right, so that's what this thing does over here. So let me just go ahead and go through this and go back over here. So we're going to update the records, or update the record, I should say. Since I went back to the previous record, notice what I'm doing over here with record index, which is currently 1, I'm going to decrement it by 1. So record index is now going to be 0. All right, so for the label, which is this guy right here, it says 1 or 2 or 3, whatever it says. It's now going to display the new number, which in this case is 0. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to display that. Okay, so that's going to be displayed on the label. All right, now I have these various text boxes, and so whatever the, let's see, record index is 0. So whatever car array 0 is, let's see, car array 0 is for the cylinder 6, for the horsepower 150, for the make Toyota, so forth and so on. All right, so for all these items, let's populate this these text boxes. So if I click continue, now all of these have been populated. All right, so let me take off this break. Go back over here. So now you understand how to use BTN next, BTN previous. You see how all this is taking place. Let's talk about a little bit more about this record update. So instead of Toyota Century, which is my 0 index or my first record, let me go ahead and double click over here and type in Camry. Okay, doesn't seem like anything has happened, right? So if I go to the next record, if I come back, okay, Camry's there. That's great. If I typed in Sentra, if I go to the next record and come back, it stays as Sentra. That's cool. So let me go ahead and type in Camry again. Here's the next record. Here's the previous record. Okay, so when I clicked the next record, it took that Sentra and it saved the Camry. So let me do that over here. First of all, here's Sentra, right? And let me go back over here and stop over here where it says BTN next. I'll stop the code right here. And let me go ahead and type in Camry. And now I'm going to select this guy right here, BTN next. All right, so BTN next, there it is. All right, so we're going to take a look at this guy over here, update record. So I'm going to step into that particular update record function. And it looks like the TXT make, that's Toyota, as you can see here. It looks like TXT model, oh, that's Camry now. By the way, it doesn't even matter if the user updated it or not. I'm just making sure that everything is being updated into the car array, which is an array of a structure. So I'll take this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy. I'm just simply going to send everything, the make, the model, so forth, into the make and the model of the car array, which these are all members of this particular array, which is an array of a structure. And so now this thing says Camry. So now guess what? This guy over here says Camry. So we just simply updated it. All right, so let me go ahead and continue. And so now if I go back to that record, you see that Camry was remembered because I updated the car array members. All right, so that takes care of, and that's going to happen for any one of these items. You can see here that I'm updating the records for all of these. All right, now I want to save my data, because if I go back over here, I think I still have, let me close automobile data, and let me take a look at it over here in the File Explorer. I'll double click it. Okay, this says Toyota Century, but I typed in Camry. So in other words, the database has not been updated. So let's go ahead and update it by clicking File and Save. All right, but before I do that, let me go ahead and stop the program. So let me stop the program here at this function that I wrote, and also let me stop the program right over here. Okay, so let me go back over here. I'm going to say File, Save. So the first thing that we did was I double clicked on MNU Save. Let me just show you what I'm talking about here over here in this dummy program here. If I go over here and double click on Save, that takes me to this menu item, or to this code area called MNU Save underscore click. That's exactly what I did over here. I went over here, File, I double clicked on Save. That took me into this code area. And what is it that I want to do when the user clicks MNU Save? Well, I want to call a function called write car data. All right, so let me jump into here. What does write car data do? It does exactly that. It writes all of the car data in your current database, this guy right here. Oh, it doesn't show me, but this guy over here, right? It writes all of that data back into the external file, automobile.txt. You just saw that automobile.txt had Sentra. It didn't have Camry, which was my new updated item. So how do I do that? Well, first of all, I'm going to create a string called delimited text, which is currently set to nothing. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through every single record in my database. So I start off with creating a counter called I, and it's going to start off at 0. Now, as long as that counter is less than the number of records, which I have 2 of them, then keep on doing this loop over and over and over again. And by the way, every time I do a loop, increment I, my counter, by 1. That's what this means. All right, so what am I going to do? I'm going to take the delimited text, which is currently nothing. I'm going to concatenate that with car array index 0 dot make dot model dot mpg dot cylinders dot horsepower. Now, by the way, because mpg is an integer, I have to convert it to a string. Same thing with cylinders and horsepower. That's why you see convert dot to string and then car array I dot mpg dot cylinders dot horsepower. These are integers. Actually, this is a double right here. These are integers, so I got to convert them to strings. I use the plus symbol to concatenate or connect them. So let's connect this with this, connect it with this, connect it with this. So in other words, I'm creating a comma delimited text database of the records that I currently have. So watch what happens when I step over. If I hover over delimited text, notice it's Camry, comma 30, comma 6, comma 150, and then there's nothing over here. That's all I have for my first record. Those are these individual items, right? The delimited text. These individual items right here, Toyota Camry 30, that's this Toyota Camry 30, so forth and so on. All right. Now, if I have another record of data, then I need to go to the beginning of the next line. So go, that's what this means right here. Go to the beginning of the line, go to the next line. That's what this \r \n, and it has to be in this order. All right, so the only way that I know to do that is if there is another record. So as long as I plus 1, which is my counter, as long as I plus 1 is not equal to the number of records, then let's go ahead and go to the beginning of the next line. Well, let's see here. I is 1. 1 plus 1 is 2. Is 2 not equal to 2? 2 is not equal to 2. Is a false, is a true. Let me say that again. If I do I, which is, this is 1, okay, 1 plus 1 is 2. Is 2 not equal to 2? All right, so watch what's going to happen over here. So I step over, go into here, and indicate that the delimited text now is going to be concatenated with this \r \n. So in other words, I have another record. That's what I'm asking over here. Is there another record to read? Yes, there is. And as long as I haven't reached that last record. All right, so let's go back over here. And so now, notice that delimited text is Toyota Camry 36 150. Oh, there's the \r \n, which means go to the beginning of the next line. It's invisible characters to go to the beginning of the next line. All right, going back to the for statement. I was 0. Now it's going to be incremented by 1. Now, as long as I is less than the number of records, yep, it is less than the number of records, so we're going to go back into here. All right, the delimited text is all of this existing stuff plus the next record. So watch what happens when I click step over. Now delimited text is all of record number 1, go to the beginning of the next line, all of record number 2. Ah, okay, so let's see here. Over here, I is 1, 1 plus 1, I is 2. 2 plus 1 is 3. Is 3 is not equal to record number? Well, that's not going to be the case, right? It's not equal to number of records. So in this case, what's going to happen is it's going to jump over that. There is no beginning of the next line to go to. And so in this case, we are finished with our for statement. So it's going to jump out of the for statement. And what do? I use system.io.file.write all text. What am I going to write all of the text? Well, first of all, what is all of the text? Well, that's this guy, delimited text. All of this right here, what we just created, I want you to write that to a file name called automobile.txt. That's what this line of code does over here. So when I step over that, now all of that data has been written to the file. Let me go ahead and continue. And now watch what happens. If I open up my File Explorer and if I double click on automobile data, there it is. I don't know if you guys remember that. This was Toyota Sentra. Now it's Camry, which is exactly what I created over here, Toyota Camry. So if I change this back to Sentra, say for example, and I want to save this. By the way, let me just take off this break so it doesn't stop here since we already saw this. I click save. All right, I forgot to remove that break. Click continue. All right, now if I go back over here to take a look at the data, double click. Hey, how come it's not Sentra? Oh, did I forget to save it? Let's see here. I think I did. Save. Sorry about that. Take off these breaks. Continue. Here we go. Let me go back over here. There's Sentra. And let me save it. Okay, so it should have been saved. Let's go back over here. Double click. And there's Sentra. Okay, very good. All right. And I think that's it. So within this particular project, you've learned several things. First of all, the heart of this lesson minimize this here. The heart of this lesson really is working with structures. And I could create an individual structure if I wanted to. So for example, I could say, okay, so automobile, mobile data, I'm going to call it Robert's car. Right? And, okay, so there's Robert's car. And let me go ahead and create Joshua's car. So automobile data, Joshua's car. And let me go ahead and create automobile data, Jackson's car. And so forth and so on. Okay, those are 3 cars that I've just created. Wait a minute. Are you telling me that I have to create a bunch of individual cars? That doesn't seem very efficient. Maybe what I should do is to create an array of cars. That way I don't have to deal with the word Robert's car, Joshua's car, Jackson's car. Automobile data 0 really will be Robert's car. Automobile data 1 will be Joshua's car. Automobile 2 will be Jackson's car, so forth and so on. So instead of doing this, I do this. Create an array of this particular structure. So what type of array is it? It's an automobile data array, which we know is a structure. Each of these has a dot property, or remember, car array dot make, car array dot model, so forth and so on. So this ability to create an array of this structure allows me the kind of power that you just saw demonstrated earlier in this video lesson. You also learned about this whole idea of dragging and dropping a menu strip to create these items, and also an open file dialog so that we could look for a specific file to open. And then we read the data by creating a stream reader. And don't forget, you've got to close every time you open a stream reader. You also have to close it. So it's like your mom saying, "Hey, do you live in a barn? Close the door. If you open the door, you got to close the door." And then you've also learned about how we use this idea of click. The next button, click the previous button to advance a record or to go back to a previous record. This idea of updating records because the user could make changes. Enabling toolbox or text boxes, the ability to write data back to that external file. So we use this line for that. But before I do that, I have to create that delimited text. Delimited means how is it being separated? When in this case, it's being separated by commas. It's comma delimited. And then, of course, all the functions that I've created. And in this case, when I click the save button, it's going to call write car data. And I also created enable text boxes. I also created this function, update records. I created a bunch of functions so that I can use them. Those are my tools that I can use in this program. And that is it. So this is Professor Robert Solis. I hope this video lesson was helpful. Have a good day. See you next time.